It's Monday, March 28th. I'm Rim, and this is Geeknights. Tonight, the humble log file.
Let's do this.
So, I understood what I'm about to talk about. Like, I expected it to take a while to edit 1080p, 60 frame a second video and make it into something. It took way longer than I could have possibly anticipated.
Well, I mean the editing part, because the editing part shouldn't have taken any longer than with standard definition video. It's only the part of the rendering, right? The processing.
Well, the rendering for 20 minutes of HD video after I did all the camera changes and zoom in and out and everything, and I had my project done, was about 2 hours. So about an hour per 10 minutes of video.
Yeah,
just to render.
that part takes a lot longer. But I mean, just actually editing the video should just, it's higher definitions, but it's the same thing, cut and paste, same amount of time.
Yeah, no, because before when I edited video, right, it was always crappy video. There's nothing I could do to it to make it look better.
Oh, so because it was HD, you were doing more things.
Yep, like for example, in this, I could zoom in on you or on me when the other one of us is picking our nose on stage. But I had to actually sit there and be like, oh, Rim's picking his nose. All right, got to zoom in on Scott. Still picking. All right, maybe we'll cut to a slide.
But with standard definitions, there was no way you could zoom because the resolution was so low.
Yep, but you saw that video we did for MagFest.
Yeah, but if it's 1080p's, then you could actually zoom in and it would still be 720p's.
Yeah,
which is enough, which is plenty of p's.
It looked just fine, especially because we're not ponies. We're just two guys.
And then if you downsampled the full zoom to 720p, the whole thing will be the same resolution, even though you're zooming in on people.
Yeah, give or take. And you know what? It worked out pretty well. I'm proud. But it saddens me, even though I understand all the reasons why, and I'm not complaining about it. That Kanye pony video I made in a half hour has 5,000 views.
Yeah, so
Our
does
Geeknights lecture.
So does my. Oh my gosh!
I think part of it is that there was a dearth of pony material for a long time on the internet that was good. So anything that was even a 2 out of 5 got tons of views.
Yep.
But yeah, the other problem is that I didn't make a PAX show with the video or anything yet because I have 100 gigabytes of video to watch and figure out what's worth keeping. And
you got to submit to the PAX community DVD.
Already did.
All right.
But here's the trouble. With Flickr, with pictures, you probably do what I do. I just take all my pictures and I look at every one of them, and when in doubt, I keep it because who cares? Doesn't take up any space.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can't do that when every convention generates about 100 gigabytes of video.
Why not?
Because I don't have that much storage space.
You could do on a terabyte drive, you could do 10 conventions. That's 2 years for $100. You can do it.
Yeah, if I keep it all and I don't do anything with it, because if I want to actually do something with it, I gotta bring it local before I open it in Premiere.
So you have a terabyte drive that you use for all your current editings. Right?
Yep.
And when you actually get the finished video, it's only a few hundred megabytes. So
no. Are you kidding? Are you kidding? The triple threat that I put online, just the YouTubes, the 720p rendered versions. How big do you think that was?
For how much video? How long was it?
It's 58 minutes of video, 720p.
That should only be a few hundred megabytes.
No.
Wait, are you talking about the raw AVIs?
No, I'm talking about the H.264.
The H.264 should be a lot smaller than that.
Nope.
You did it wrong.
Nope, I didn't.
Because you can download full-length, feature-length Blu-ray rips that are not that big.
Yeah, and part of it is
3-hour movies.
If you render
1080p.
I rendered it the way YouTube said. This is exactly how you should render it for YouTube. And it was about 700 megabytes per 20 minute shot. On YouTube.
Anyway, but the thing is, the encodings that YouTube has are going to be. You try to download the H.264 from YouTube, it's going to be a lot smaller.
Not if you download the highest quality version. Actually, it's the same size. It's almost the same file I uploaded.
That's very strange. Anyway,
however, the cool thing is I don't need to keep those because I can just re-render anytime I want from the project.
Well, it takes forever though.
Yeah, how big do you think the project is?
The point is you have a working drive that you use for the video you're currently working on, and then in terms of storage drives, you need a terabyte every 2 years. Not a problem.
Yeah, that's only for those conventions. If I never do any other video, like a certain project we're talking about.
Yeah, okay, so you know what? They have 2 terabyte drives now, and soon they'll have 5 terabyte drives. You know what they have now? 600 megabyte SSDs.
Huh? 600 megabytes.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
No, I mean gigabytes. I'm sorry, gigabytes.
I remember when I was a kid and one of my friends was like, yeah, I copied the CD to my computer. And I was like, you goddamn motherfucking liar.
I full installed MechWarrior 2, 500 megabyte on my 720 megabyte hard drive.
Because you were in the same boat I was in. When you were a kid, the computer was yours to control because no one else in the family knew what was up.
And then I'd delete it, and then I would full install something else.
Yep.
And it would be so fast because we full installed.
But I mean, one time my mom
I remember
was like,
when that was people don't even remember, like back in the day, that was like when you installed a game, it would actually say, do you want to do the wuss install or read off the CD? Do you want to do the medium install, the full install? Sometimes
it always had the full install. Full
there-
install was like the ludicrous option. Like, no way. No one's ever going to do that.
Sometimes there would be 5 different options of how much you want to install to the disk. Nowadays, there is none of that. It's just install, and that's it. You must install.
I
And
remember trying to
there's
convince
only
my mom
one level of install.
to buy me a second CD-ROM drive so I wouldn't have to swap CDs so often.
Yeah, we're playing like Wing Commander.
Or Under a Killing Moon, Tex Murphy.
Yeah.
That was a 7, or Phantasmagoria. That was like 7 or 8 CDs. Oh my
It
God.
would have been like one DVD.
But I remember a couple of times my parents would complain because the computer ran out of space, and basically they didn't realize that it's because I had deleted everything and filled it up with games on my 540 megabyte hard drive.
I pretty much like install a game, delete a game, install a game, delete a game, install a game, you know.
Yeah, but I remember like when I figured out, oh, the save files are there. I'm gonna back those up.
That's right.
So anyway, it's Monday. We haven't done a Monday show in a while. We haven't done a lot of Geek Nights in a while.
We're going to do a lot of Geek Nights now.
We're gonna try to not miss an episode at least until Anime Boston.
Yeah. Hopefully we won't even miss one then. Let's get one in the hopper.
We could do that. We could do that. Of course, we have to make more RFE.
RFE, yeah.
Yeah. That other project.
Anyway. So, let's
been
check
a
the
while.
tech news.
Got a tech news?
There's been a ton of tech news, but there's only one that I really want to talk about.
Really?
Yeah, let's talk about Geohots.
Geohots.
Do you know the deal with Geohots?
I know the deal.
Okay.
So what do you want to talk about? The act of doing it? The act of disseminating it? Do we want to talk about the ludicrous lawsuits flying about?
Well, I want to talk about he's fighting back against the lawsuit, right? And this is the interesting part is that it's, there's a whole thing on Grok Law that has all the lawyering, right? Because I'm obviously going to get it all completely wrong.
Yeah, we are not lawyers, as
Right.
you listeners tell us on a daily basis.
No kidding. But basically, he's fighting back, and it's actually really interesting. Now, he's fighting back, of course, mostly in a very loy way, saying the jurisdiction is wrong, right?
I had a game as a kid called Jurisdiction, and you had to object to questioning in court.
Uh-huh.
That's all I got there.
Okay.
That's my anecdote.
So he's basically saying, like, look, you shouldn't be able to sue me in California or wherever it is. You should have to sue me in Jersey where I live. It's like, because it's like, hey, I live in Jersey. If this crime was committed, if there was a crime committed, it was in Jersey. That's you should have to come after me. You shouldn't be able to have to come after me in California just because I own a blog. It's like,
as a non-lawyer, agree with that. Assuming that
and
his hosting,
many other reasons.
assuming that his hosting is also in Jersey.
I don't think his hosting's in Jersey.
Well, where is it?
I don't know. I think that's where they're getting him. I don't know. That's weird like that.
Because
but there's many other reasons for his trying to move the jurisdictions, right? One of them, it's like, where was it? They couldn't prove that they had yet to offer any proof that he accepted the PlayStation Network terms of service, right? They failed to offer any proof that the terms of service could be applicable to him, even assuming everything they said is true. There's also a bunch of questions that he's being sued by Sony America, SCEA, Sony Computer Entertainment America, right? But if you look on a PlayStation 3 box, everything on the box says all rights Sony in Japan. So like SCEA, are you even allowed to sue him? Sony Japan should have to sue him. Sony Japan
I
is the
didn't even
owner.
think of that.
Right? And it's all this stuff that's, especially the stuff pertaining to terms of service that is extremely interesting. Plus, it's like his is a hardware hack, theoretically. Right?
Now, there's also
all these terms of service are for the software, and they can't even prove that he accepted terms of service for the software or bought any software. It was just hardware. So it's like, ooh, does the GMC even apply to the hardware? It's a physical thing, and he's not caught, right? It's not a GMCA issue then.
Yeah, never mind all the weird follow-up complications. Like
but if
when someone
is there
tweeted,
firmwares? Is that now software?
oh, look at the social side. Remember when someone tweeted it at a Sony guy and he retweeted it with an answer, like a response?
Yeah.
Sony published the code.
Yep.
I can tell you the code. The code is short enough to tattoo on my arm trivially.
But yeah, read this thing on Grok Law, right, which has all the lawyering bits for you lawyers, and it's really, really interesting, and it should make nerds kind of excited to see someone fight back against this kind of thing at least a little bit. If we can even get a tiny victory out of this, like terms of service not applicable in this extremely small case.
I recall Raymond Scott circa 2005 saying something very important that is coming up yet again. Someday, terms of service and shrink wrap are going to really be tested in court. And whichever way that bone falls, we win.
Yep.
Because if terms of service are as draconian and restrictive and able to be applied to people as the governments and corporations want them to be, I'm putting some crazy shrink wrap on everything I ever do.
And if they're not, party time.
Oh my,
But yeah, it's good. I think this is probably not going to be anything like that. It's just a jurisdiction battle, but it's still pretty neat to see someone try to fight.
So are we in accord here, though? I think in terms of the actual, I don't think that any crime was committed at any point.
I don't think so either.
Now, I would agree that if someone used that
and I
code,
definitely don't think, even if there was a crime committed, I definitely don't think any moral wrong was done.
Well, here's the thing. If, say, someone else, using the information he provided, made a bootleg copy of a game, signed it all legit, and then sold it in outright piracy form.
All right.
I think that guy is liable for all the copyright stuff, and I would be cool with that guy going to jail.
Yeah.
But I'm not cool with, one, that guy going to jail longer than a murderer.
That's for sure.
2, that guy being fined more than the money in the world.
That's also true.
Or 3, Geohot in any way being culpable.
Yep.
I mean, it's like if I tell you, hey, Scott, did you know you could put bullets in guns and then you shoot a bunch of people? Is that my fault?
No, it's like, why does, if that was the case, then, the Heckler and Koch people would be in jail, they'd have the death penalty.
This is why the DMCA bothers me. Say I buy, I don't know, a box of muffins, and in the box of muffins, there's just a little wooden box that says, do not open or I will sue you. And there's nothing even in the box. That's what the DMCA is. They're basically saying they can sue you. They can take you to court because you opened a box that you bought and owned that was given to you.
Yeah, it's like, it says don't remove tag from mattress or whatever, but...
Well, I'm allowed to remove that because I'm the end user.
I'm just saying.
I cannot resell the mattress without that tab, but I can't resell a mattress anyway because bed bugs. We live in New York now.
The point is, right, there's the old thing about removing tags from mattresses, right? It's like, you can't bust me for removing the tag from my own mattress. If I want to un-DRM the own thing I bought on iTunes.
Now, if I redistribute the thing I bought on iTunes publicly, then yeah.
I don't think that's morally wrong, but it is technically legally wrong.
And you know what? I'm okay with the court system going after that. I'm one of the nerds who's only mad when they actually come into my personal computer.
Yeah. Anyway.
So there's an article on Slashdot, and one of my coworkers, get this, he had never heard of Slashdot. He's a super techie smart guy who just never heard of it.
Wait, how old is he?
He's like 2 or 3 years younger than us.
Okay, that makes sense because Slashdot faded and other things came up.
He's all Reddit.
Of course.
So one day I was like, you should read Slashdot. He's like, what? Why?
Isn't it weird how we were NES and 16-bit kids, right?
Yeah.
But people just a few years younger than us, like people who were freshmen in college when we were just slightly more than freshmen in college, they were all PlayStation. It's like the NES and 16-bit era was really long. If you're just a couple years younger than us, how could you be PlayStation, which is the generation after that?
Well, look at childhood. You, me, and all of our friends who are 2, 3, even 4 years older than us are clearly children of the 80s. Like, the 80s really made us who we are.
I think 90s, the thing is, we knew 80s because we lived for 8 years.
Here's the thing.
We also knew 90s.
Here's the thing. We were children.
We knew 90s more than we knew 80s.
We knew the 90s, but we were children of the 80s. Like, our cultural heritage...
Our cultural heritage is more 90s than 80s, but there is still, it's a great deal of both. It's like, it's like 60-40, 60-90s, 40-80s.
You see, you're not letting me finish. A lot of our friends who are 3, 4, even 5 years older than us, who remember a lot more of the 80s, their childhood culture is almost identical to ours. Yet, people who are even 1 or 2 years younger than us have a completely different childhood culture.
There was some sort of barrier there?
There was a line where something happened. I'm not sure what cultural event it was.
It's like people born in 87, 88, like the late 80s, it's like they're like completely different. Like
Dude.
they were all PlayStation. They somehow missed 8 and 16 bits.
Yeah, I mean, people born in 1984 actually don't remember a lot of things that are just common knowledge to the 82s. Could 2 years be that much of a difference?
I don't know.
But anyway, it was interesting that he's like, hey, did you see this article on Reddit? And I'm like, an article on Reddit. Did I see it? You didn't give me any clues as to what this article's about. So I'm going to say no. And he's like, yeah, the one about how you shouldn't work on Wall Street. And then I'm like, no. And I had Slashdot open on my desktop because I just gotten into work and I was checking the news before I did my bullshit. And that was the article that was just posted to Slashdot.
Mm-hmm.
I love Slashdot, but it is slow. The article basically makes the roundabout argument that you shouldn't let geeks and nerds and smart people work on Wall Street because smart people working on Wall Street is the problem. It's taking all the smart people away from every other human endeavor.
That's true.
Now, this argument's been made a lot. I see people like espousing it on blogs. It gets debated a lot, but this is kind of a really comprehensive article of all the reasons why this is harming our society or technology.
It is
or
harming
whatever.
the society. It is harming technology. Yep.
But my question to all the people who complain about this is that would you turn down a job where you would make more money than you currently pay in taxes to do less work than you're doing now?
Yep.
Would you actually turn it down?
I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't turn the job down. I'd be like, hells yeah, show me the money.
That's why I work on Wall Street. That's why everyone who works on Wall Street works on Wall Street. I worked at IBM. I made less money there than I pay in taxes now. Literally. I worked in hospitals in the Bronx. I did IT for hospitals, like straight up, like, one of the places where technology could probably save more lives and help more people than any other application in the world, using IT to make healthcare more efficient and better. I was surrounded there by some of the dumbest people I have ever had the displeasure of working with in my entire life. And I quit entirely because I could not stand to be around those people anymore.
Yep, it's a perverse incentive and a chicken egg and a catch-22 all at the same time, right? That the smart people and the money are on Wall Street, so smart people go there, and smart people like to be around smart people, and they like more money, so they keep going to Wall Street. So that bolsters Wall Street. So now smart people are even more likely to go to Wall Street. So
well, as Emily said
if you
very
want
eloquently,
people to not go to Wall Street, it has to be. I mean, usually you don't want to go to the government solution, but really there is no other solution. The government has to rearrange the incentives to get the smart people to leave Wall Street. There's no other way to do it. Otherwise, you're just going to keep going.
Well, Scott, you recall, as Emily said so aptly some time ago, the reason you make so much money is because you work for the money factory. I mean, if I work for the candy factory, I get all the candy I can eat.
Yeah, why? If anyone needs a job, go work at a bank. Why? That's where the money is.
Actually, that was always my advice to punk kids who were like, I need a job, I'm in high school.
Go be a bank teller.
You realize being a bank teller when you're 16, 18,
Cha-ching!
You'll make like 16 to $20 an hour.
And you can steal if you're really, really good.
Actually, not that much cash changes hands.
I'm saying you got to be really, really good.
Scott, you realize bank tellers in the modern era really don't touch that much money because who goes to a bank but old people?
But you can go in the safe.
There's not that much money in that safe.
No, but the safe deposit boxes.
Yeah, you're going to break into one of those?
You got to be really, really good. When I say really, really, I mean really, really, really. Like, ninja good.
I think you're better off robbing
unrealistic
the bank
movie action hero good.
And not working there. Besides, one of the pieces of advice my dad gave me before I went off to college was don't ever rob a bank because that's a federal crime, not a state crime, and you don't want to go to a federal prison.
Good advice. Other good advice. Don't steal mail either.
It's not just
same reason.
I guess my point here is that it's not just that all the money's there. I mean, doing the same IT work on Wall Street as opposed to at to some small company, you'll get paid like twice as much. But a lot of people will work even when the money is not in their favor. Like they'll work for a place that's more fun rather than the money. I work for a place that's more money because that's just the way the world is. And I really like money. But there's kind of this sublimation of smart people. If you work with other smart people, all of you collectively will draw more smart people into the organization because smart people like to work with other smart people.
Yep. This is why Google, is the way they are.
But if a company already has mostly average or stupid people in
it's hard for them to get smart people.
Or they'll get smart people. They will trick smart people in.
And if smart people show up, they get pissed off and leave.
Yep. So,
and they're not going to put the smart people in charge of themselves.
So say you've got 50-50.
Because they'll fire all of them.
Smart people and dumb people. if even one or two smart people leave, all the rest are going to evaporate away because now there's this critical mass of dumb.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, beyond that, a lot of these arguments are also kind of just spurious. I mean, I don't know if I personally would be making the world a better place if I'd studied mathematics like everyone's trying to tell me to do instead of IT. And if I was doing IT not on Wall Street, I would have quit doing IT like 3 years ago because I was sick of that bullshit.
Well, I do sort. That's the only thing I agree with is like, yes, if we did, I can't blame anyone for going to finance. I would probably go to finance too, except I work with sort of open source technologies, which aren't popular in the finance world. If I worked with Oracle and shit, I would be all about.
Yeah, this is why. If
I was an Oracle Java guy, I'd be all over that finance.
Well,
shit.
This is why you're like, yeah, using the new version of Pylons to do something. I'm like, yeah,
it's called Pyramid
writing a
now.
SOAP service in ASP.NET.
Exactly. If it wasn't for that, I would totally do it too, but because I can't blame anyone for doing it. But it is true. I do totally agree that because the smart people are there, attracting the smart people, and because the money's there, it is hurting the rest of the industries from improving. Right. This is why hospitals are not so good. This is why technology is fine, but other things are not nearly as good as they could be because the smart people are all working in technology and finance.
But I think it's a kind of a cycle that started.
I think
just
really what we need to do is we need to find a way to get a perverse incentive to get the smart people to work in public service. Then we could fix some shit.
Pretty much. Let them do what they want or pay them a lot of money.
Yep.
Either one will get a ton of smart people to apply.
And also having smart people already in there without bullshit bureaucracy holding back their smartness.
I'll tell you what, if I could be a computer teacher, like in high schools, I will teach computer science to high school kids.
Any way I want.
They could pay me $40K a year, and I would do it gladly.
I need a summer off.
Yeah, duh.
But to make the rest of the money I need to live.
Yeah, but I wouldn't even question it. But the fact is,
there's too much bullshit.
The barrier. It's weird to me that the barrier to entry for me, a senior,
it's the
IT
same as like with
professional-
Otakon, right? Every other convention is like cooperating with us to make the convention better, and Otakon's like, yeah, we don't want your free help making our convention more awesome. It's like schools are the same way. I'm like, hey, school, pay me and let me be a computer teacher. Only condition is that you let me teach computers the way I want. And I promise I won't, hurt the children's. And they'll be like, yeah, no. It's like,
maybe
why would you say
start
no?
A school.
You want to start a school? It costs a lot of money.
Rimmon Scott School for the Gifted?
How about just Rimmon Scott's, elementary technology school, K through 12.
K through 1 might be enough.
Yeah.
Just gotta show kid like a TI-85 and be like, if you can make Pong happen on this without looking at the internet to figure it out, you will be a wizard.
We call it Rimmon Scott's Wizard School. Everyone gets a hat, but you don't get the robe until you graduate. Only the hat.
So things of the day. Kind of old, but I forgot about this, and I think it's just really clever and cute. It's just a video of a girl talking about toy snakes, and it's surprisingly, I don't know, there's something about the way she's like, snake, 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 that's just really adorable.
I like it. It's
And
also
actually,
really smart and cool.
It raises a math question and doesn't answer it. So you'll know what kind of person you are. If you watch it and just think that was cute, you're one kind of person. If you watch it and then you start trying to solve the snake problem, you're another kind of person.
Yeah. I started to. I was like, man, I wish I knew the solution to that problem, but I don't know the math. I'm not even going to try. I'm the lazy nerd.
Snake, 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 snake,
snake, snake. So this is old game, very old game, named QWOP. You may have heard of it. It's a Flash game. It's semi-famous.
It's also known as Jesus motherfucking Christ. Fuck this game.
And basically the game, if you haven't seen it, right, is a game where you use the 4 buttons on the keyboard, Q, W, O, and P, and the buttons control the calves and thighs on the left leg and the calves and thighs on the right leg.
Now the goal of the
this
game
runner, and
is
you're
to
trying
make
to
a dude break his neck repeatedly.
You're trying to run as far as you can using just these 4 buttons, and the game is hard as balls and unintuitive. Now the guy, that's not my thing of the day, even though maybe we'll link to it anyway. It's an old famous game you should have heard of. This guy who made that game made a new game called GIRP, G-I-R-P. And the way this game works is it's actually better. I think it's better than QWOP. It still has that same frustrating keyboard aspect to it, but you can make non-zero progress on your first try, which makes it a little bit, it's more accessible than QWOP, but not by much.
I enjoy the inaccessibility of QWOP because that's where the fun comes from. Playing it and swearing at it
It's so weird. Like, how could you make a game that was intentionally poorly designed, yet that works in the game's favor?
I think it has something to do with the fact
it's like if you were making perfume and you put poop smell in there and it became the most popular perfume.
No, but look at what it's doing. Look at the elegant message. The game is actually a pretty good analogy of how you walk in terms of, muscles are contracting in this order. And our brains just do that. But when we have to think, calf, thigh, it's way harder to walk.
Yeah, I don't think QWOP matches real thigh and calf movement.
But I think it's a suitable analogy for the kind of...
You're getting too deep into a shitty little game QWOP, all
I
right?
just got to think about what happens if I'm trying to raise and lower my arm. How many muscles are working in concert? And the abstract thought I am thinking is simply make the arm go up and down in Scott's face.
All right, you're thinking too hard about this.
All right. We got a meta moment very briefly. We were at the Penny Arcade Expo. We were at Zenkai Con. If you wanted to see our panels from the Penny Arcade Expo and you were not able to, either because the room was full or because you weren't at PAX,
full.
The room was...
almost full.
It was full on this Sunday for one of them, but it wasn't full on Friday
It wasn't
night.
100% full. It was 99% full. You could have walked in and sat down.
Well, they shut the doors, so no one was going to come in anyway.
That's true.
The room was pretty much full. But basically, if you couldn't get into the panel for whatever reason, a lot of people, don't go to PAX because they're dumb. Well, we did, in fact, film all of our panels at PAX, and through the power of video, I have put one of them on YouTube, and I will try to put the other two on YouTube as I have time.
I don't know if we're going to do every panel ever, because
no.
I want people to go to the conventions and actually have something to see, because we repeat panels a lot. So I'd like to mostly put up retired panels, or panels we're probably not going to do again, but panels that are brand new, probably don't want to put them on YouTube.
See, at the same time, it'll be good, because we have this problem at conventions where we'll do a panel, and half the people who show up are people who already know who we are, and half of them have already seen that panel at another con.
Then why are they coming to that panel?
I don't know, but they do.
Hopefully what we can do, though, is if we put things on YouTube, then we'll be forced to come up with new panels, but we need new panels.
We have a lot of new panels. We just haven't done them anywhere yet.
We need more.
I mean, look, we had almost all new panels for PAX East.
Yeah, we get a lot of new conventions.
And all of our Anime Boston panels are effectively new because we only tested them once at ZenkaiCon.
Kineticon.
Kineticon, not ZenkaiCon. ZenkaiCon, we trotted out the old classics.
That's what they asked us to do. We got to do the panels they ask.
Yeah.
We can't, just tell them these are the panels we're doing, because then they might just reject all the, we suggest these are the 3 new ones. We're only doing these 3. They'll be like, we don't want any of those 3. We want these old 3.
They don't know.
We don't want to
better.
do the old 3. Well, you're not doing anything.
But anyway, all that aside, the book club book, as soon as Scott finishes reading it, is
I read
Michio
one. I still haven't. I've read one chapter.
Kaku's Hyperspace.
I'll start reading it today.
And we will be at Anime Boston doing our usual panels. So
yeah, let's do the book club book definitely a week from Thursday, on that Thursday. The next Thursday episode.
So we've realized, and we did some shows on topics related to this. Like, remember we did that show on like NTP and all those different things, but it's coming to my attention more and more that many, many people who claim to be IT people or claim to know about technology don't know how to administer servers.
Well,
at all.
I mean, system administration is sort of a dying thing, right?
Which is a problem.
Because it's like, in the olden days, system administration was like a legit deal. You needed people to administer systems, right? People who, knew how to use a server, because using a server was different than using a regular computer, right? It was like, especially if you had mainframes and things.
Yeah.
It's like you needed programmers to write the software that went on the mainframes.
And then you had an operator, kind of like an engineer on a train who sits there and pulls the levers and makes the software go.
Yeah, but it's not just people using to use that. There's the software that you're actually... there's like 2 different users, right? There's the person who, takes this software, say Microsoft Word, right, and produces documents. But there's also a separate person who has to install Microsoft Word and make sure it keeps running and keep it up to date and all those sorts of things. Now, you might think, well, that's the same person as the user, right? Especially on a home computer. But in a company, when you've got a mainframe, it's like, all right, who installs and configures Exchange, right? A programmer made Exchange, and a user opens Outlook and uses Exchange, but some guy has to install a copy of Windows Server, install Exchange, configure Exchange, set all the SMTP settings and all those things, and that is the administrator, and it's a job that was needed a great deal, especially in the Windows and mainframe days.
So I will argue that it is still needed.
It
it's
is
just
still
neglected.
needed. It is just needed less. And in cases where it is still done, it is done often poorly.
Now you keep saying it's needed less. Now, I would agree with you in that technology's made it a lot easier to run a server. But at the same time, that assumes that the people who originally set up any given server set it up with even a reasonable degree of competence.
Well, no. It's what I'm saying. It's needed less, not because it's not needed, but it's because there are so many services out there that basically outsource this, right? So it's centralized, and there are many tools that allow it to be sort of the scale of it, right? So, for example, you'll have something like Amazon. So you just click a button and you get a new server. You didn't need another administrator to do this because there's like a few administrators at Amazon that can administer a lot more systems per administrator with tools like Puppet and all these other things. And, a lot of times if you have some software and you want to get it running on a server, you can get like a managed hosting. So there's one administrator who would normally you would need one administrator per host. Per system. But now one guy can administer so many systems at a data center, especially with cloud services. You need less administrators. It doesn't mean that you don't need any administrators.
See, now that's only from the perspective, though, primarily of consumers or small companies, because anywhere else, there's a ton of in-house servers where there are administrators doing physical servers in data centers.
Yes, but I'm just saying overall in the world, the number of administrators we need is fewer.
I don't think it is. I think it's more because there's far more computers.
There are more computers, yes.
And also, those computers, many of them, the only reason we have fewer administrators is because, in my experience, pretty much every server I've ever run into out in the wild world, like not at the place I work now, but like when I worked, say, at IBM, and I would be tasked with, hey, there's this server, and the guy who was maintaining it and, just system administering it retired. See what it needs and take care of it. And
well, is it running right now?
Yeah,
then
it's
it needs
running.
nothing.
Yeah. So I log into it to see, what's up, and it's a disaster. And eventually it fails, and there's almost no way to get it going again. And there's a million different topics we could get into, but I really want to focus tonight just on logging, because I think most people who have computers don't actually really understand what logs are.
No, not at all.
Don't use them. Don't interact with them.
Me, I didn't really get logs until like the late 90s, early 2000s, just because I was using like DOS systems and Windows systems where logs don't really sort of exist. But I knew that logs were a thing because if you watched any sort of movies with hacking, they would talk about logs and removing yourself from the logs.
Yep, I saw him in the logs.
Yeah, but it's like I never saw actual logs or worked with them until much later. But now I know all about logs.
Yeah, but I don't think most people do. I mean, I would say that 9 times out of 10, whenever there's a problem, like a server just won't boot or there's a problem, just look at var log messages and you'll see exactly what happened. Like, oh, the OOM killer went amok because you used up all your memory.
Yep.
Or something like just painfully, just blunderingly obvious. But yet, most of the IT people I've run into out there don't actually even know that there's a var log or even what var is.
Whoa, really? I know the people I know, they know there are logs and they know to look at them, but often the logs are misconfigured or they don't know which log to look in, or even if they find the log to look in, they don't know how to read the log, so they can't understand what they found, or they'll see something that's irrelevant and think it's relevant just because it's an error message. And
the simple thing about logs is kind of like RIM's pro tip number 1, but it's a legit pro tip, not an internet ironic pro tip. If you're diagnosing a problem in an unfamiliar environment and in the logs you see an error and you think it's related to your problem, look at the previous few weeks' logs and see how commonly that error occurs. Because in varlog secure, you're probably going to see a whole bunch of bullshit, even on a well-running server.
Yep. Plenty of it.
But like simple things like that, I don't think people know. And I think back to RIT, they didn't teach us shit about logs.
Nope.
They didn't teach anyone like, varlog messages and the terminal server, syslog, how to use it.
Syslog NG.
Yeah, I use syslog NG.
rsyslog.
I use syslog
Network,
NG.
What's it called? Centralization of logging.
Where you have the
log
logs
rotating.
Never mind, no one monitors their logs.
Oh, hell no.
We do. And it's really simple. Just run some sort of like process that just reads your logs in semi-real time and, regular expression-wise, pull out errors and send them to someone.
Yep.
And yet no one even does that.
Yeah.
I think my primary blame really is going to fall on Windows.
Mm.
Because most people learn computers through Windows.
Yep.
And
Just like I said.
I have never in my life successfully diagnosed a problem by looking at the Windows Event Manager.
Okay. See, that's the one thing. All systems that aren't Windows, pretty much, right? They keep logs in text files. And you can just look at the text files, and there are various tools you can use to parse these text files and scan them and get information out of them in, very easy and standard ways that always work. But in Windows, all the logs are in this weird GUI. It's really hard to figure out and is non-obvious.
Well,
and pretty much only Windows experts can go in there and get it.
You realize there is a secret land of real logging in Windows.
Really?
There's the kernel logs.
How do you get there?
So I acquired this from a vendor a long time ago. I have it at work. And it's this debug viewer that basically shows you the real-time output of the Windows kernel console.
Okay.
So it's basically the system.out or the kind of like, I'm trying to think of a good analogy for Linux. Like, when you write a crappy program or you see a crappy service that just spits shit out into the console?
Yeah.
So ever log into a server as root and you see just all this crap flooding your screen, interrupting your commands because someone didn't set up syslog
Only
right?
on a really old shitty system.
Well, Windows has something like that that's hidden. So you run a capture basically of the kernel, like the debug view logs of Windows, and you can see just everything that's flying by. And a lot of Windows services, actually, you can configure them to log different log levels to that, and then capture that. And then your server crashes because the program that reads it is a piece of shit.
That's right. But yeah, let's do some topics in logging, right? So,
All right.
So let's first talk about log rotating, because Pete, this is something that's done often today automatically, right? So if you install an Ubuntu system or Fedora system, all the log rotation is already pre-configured. So
Now, that's good in one way. I really agree with desktop Linux and even like low-level servers. Intelligent defaults are better than good customizability any day.
Yeah.
But wait, I just said that the iPhone's the best phone. Anyway. Anyway, the problem with that is if someone working for, say, a financial institution or someone working in any industry where there's regulation, like telecoms, there are legal requirements for certain kinds of logs and records being kept for certain numbers of years. And if you just build a default Ubuntu server, you're not going to have 2 years worth of your logs.
No, see, basically what the deal with log rotating is this. You got logs, so everything that happens on the computer is being written down, right? It's like logs go all the way back, to ship's logs on boats, perhaps even older than that. You basically...
perhaps, Scott, all the records we have of the Sumerian language are logs of grain shipments being received.
Yeah, right? It's like, someone just writes down everything that happens. Well, on a computer, which has such incredible power and is doing a lot of work...
And isn't running Windows.
A lot of things happen all the time, which means the log gets really big, and which means the log is going to eat up all your hard drive space eventually. And if you have a lot, if there's sudden bursts of activity, you could have trouble if your hard drive gets full, which is why, number one, you always want to keep your logs on a separate partition from everything else. So worst case scenario, if that fills up and you're out of disk space, you won't run out of disk space for your actual application and have downtime. You'll only fail to log.
Let's zoom out a little bit. Really, the Linux file system kids out there, like there's var and all those different places. I keep saying var because var log is where you should log everything.
Yep.
And there's var temp and all the different places under var. var is the shit that changes that you don't necessarily care about. var is where var itself should be on a separate partition because var is the most likely thing to fill up other than temp.
Yep.
And you don't want that to hose your whole server.
Nope.
Also, log rotation, there's different ways to rotate logs. Like you can do the circular rotation. You've got one file that just kind of gets the oldest records in it get overwritten as newer records come in.
Well, that's a ring log.
Yeah, ring log.
Because you're writing a ring. But yeah, basically the idea of log rotation is that when the log gets too big, either by you judging by how big it is or judging by how long it's been since you last rotated, you can either like zip up the logs and start a fresh blank one, just maybe archive logs or delete old logs according to some schedule, right? Such that your hard drive space won't fill up, but you'll have enough backlog that you can solve problems and look things up.
Yep. Or just rotate them such that, we have a different file for every day. So say there's a problem and I don't have one 400 terabyte log file from the last 100 years to grep through. Instead, I can look at the log for the day the problem happened.
Yep.
Now, speaking of the size of the logs, I mean, it sounds like it'd be complex. Like, all right, maybe I'll write a little script that'll say, like, every day if the log's more than 10 megabytes, I should... It turns out that in Unix and Linux, anything that anyone who administered servers back in the day would have to do more than once is already built in.
Yeah, nowadays, usually there's an automatic log rotator. You can look in like Etsy log rotate.d, and there'll be configuration files that automatically set up log rotating.
Anything you would think you would want to do with logs is already built into any Linux computer.
And people just don't realize it because it's handled automatically by the distribution. But if you're an administrator, you actually need to look at that. You can't just let even if you're using Ubuntu, the defaults might work for you, which would be fine, but you better check them at least to make sure that they're working for you and complying, with whatever regulations you have and also with whatever you want. Maybe you want something different.
So when you're trying to, move on to another topic, when you're actually trying to debug a problem in the logs, like there's a problem, I'm going to look in the logs. You're really knowing your way around Linux, as in, tail, head, grep,
less,
sed, less. Not so much more.
A lot of people, right? I always see this mistake all the time. They try to open a log file in their text editor, and then it crashes because it loads the entire log file into memory. They don't realize that you need to use, some sort of pager like less, which is, the preferred pager, but you can use more if you want, which will allow you to easily look at a gigantic text file without eating up all the memory on the machine and crushing you.
Or grep. Grep is one of the most powerful tools in your tool set.
Yeah, if you don't know grep and regular expressions, you can't be system administrator of Unix systems.
Regular expressions are literally like the currency of what
If I was hiring system administrators, the first questions I would ask them in the interview would be regular expression related, and if they didn't know, I'd just be like, goodbye.
That's pretty much how I interview people.
Yeah.
I ask them, the question I always ask is, so say you're troubleshooting a problem.
All right. Let's see if I can get this question right.
And you've got to look through the log files. Like, say it's an Apache problem, someone's like, some module isn't working right or something. Now, of course, I'm watching them to see if their eyes glaze over when I say Apache module.
Mm-hmm.
You got to watch for these things. But, so a problem happened the other day, and the guy's username and the IP he came from. How would you go about finding out what the problem was? Like, what would be your steps going through the log?
I know his username.
His username.
I could grep the logs for
All right,
his
you
username.
already win. You win. You're already past.
I could just do grep space username space file that is /var/log/apache/access_.
You already know more than most people I've ever interviewed for any position at any company I've ever worked for.
Well, how sad.
So then the follow-on is with grep, because, people usually they can use grep kind of hokily, I would say.
Yeah, they can't actually grep for a regular expression, but they can grep for something. See, the thing is, you got to be really good. You're like me. You can use find and xargs and grep together. That's when you get hired and a raise.
I never, ever need to use find or xargs.
Really?
Because...
What if you want to grep all the files recursively in a directory that have the same extension, and you want to grep all of them?
That's trivial.
How do you do it?
I do it from the command line. I usually do something like grep my giant regular expression, and then I put, the file name .star.
But what if you want to do, for example, all HTML files recursively from the current folder?
Grep star.html.
That doesn't work. That's not going to do it.
Actually, I set up my shell to where that does work.
What you would do is you would find .-name space star.html pipe xarg space grep space.
When I do find something? When there are too many files to do a listing. When there are too many files to be arguments for something.
I'll have to show you the secrets of find, because clearly I'm more advanced in the Unix department than you are.
Because I've set up my system to where that's unnecessary. I have, because all my log files are name of daemon, date, all in one line, dot, and then they roll over like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Up to 900, 1,000, 10,000, whatever, every day.
What if you want to look at every Monday?
Oh, I never need to look at a previous day's logs for something like that. That's a whole different... We don't keep them on the server.
I'm just saying, there's reasons to do things like that.
Yeah, but
Unix skills.
I'm just saying my daily work, I don't need to do that.
I do that quite often usually because I have a big code base, and I'll, for example, want to look for a variable, but I know it's not going to be any HTML files, only Python files. So I'll grep only the Py files, but recursively. I do that a lot.
See, usually I know what...
I actually have aliases for that.
Usually I know what
often.
file a problem's in, but I'm doing something more like trace a particular like execution or thread.
I'll do
the
something like
logs.
I'm removing functionality from an application, so I need to find every place that functionality is used to remove it.
I have more things like figure out why something happened to an order with this ID, and I grep through the logs for that ID, and then I piece together the story of that order through the logs. Sort matters a lot, actually, for that.
Yeah, you got to use sort. You ever use cut and paste?
Oh my god, I use cut all the time because we use
all your logs are delimited properly?
They're delimited to an insane degree.
That's good. Very good.
Yeah, let's talk about writing log files, because people don't think about that. You think sysadmins don't know what to do with logs? Developers don't know what to do with fucking logs.
Yeah, when you write a log, right, you got to remember this is going to be read by someone, but that someone is going to be using the Unix tools to read it more easily.
You
like
can't
grep.
just be like, yeah, if my code runs into an exception, just write the exception to the logs, like this multi-line monster. No, my log files are log channel space, time and date, and all other that stuff. Space, like name of daemon.
Yeah, you
need
to have a standard format, and if possible, a standard format for every log, regardless of what it is.
Yep.
That way, it's easy for somebody to, easily parse that log to find what they're looking for. If every log file is a different format, and if the format isn't consistent, then it's like it's such a pain in the ass to find anything in it, because it's like, I want to find everything with the date. Well, half the things in this log file don't even have a date.
Or what about log levels? I want to find all the actual problems.
Yeah, I want to find everything that's an error, but nothing that's a warning. But I still want to log the warnings, because I might want to see them another time. But I only want to see the errors right now.
Yep.
If the word error isn't there in a way that I can easily grep for it, then that's going to become impossible to do.
Working with shitty logs, I will often just be like, case insensitive grep for the word error, warning, problem, fatal, and I'll just see what I find. The best way to do it is to actually have defined log channels. Like say a two-digit, because you want it to be at the front of each line, so you can do the front-based grepping, which is a huge performance benefit.
Yep. Another thing that you can do if you're a really good system administrator, right, and you have a shitty log file, or even a good log file, you can whip out the heavy guns, sed and awk.
Oh, man.
If you get an awk is like, sed is like an M16, but awk is like a minigun.
Awk is like the whole hog.
Yeah. If you can use awk, then you have won. You win the game.
I'll admit, I don't use awk often enough to, I
haven't used awk since RIT, but I know it's there.
Yep, I got to look at a reference when I use awk most of the time.
It's like the bomb you keep in the closet, and you don't use it because you never need to actually use a bomb. You can always get by with a handgun. So I took a
class at RIT that was literally, the whole first half of the class was sed and awk.
I took that class.
Yep. They gave you that book that was like a little sed book and then a big awk book.
Yep.
Awk, you could basically write an OS in that thing. It's
but
amazing.
I mean, I've heard stories of like guys teaching AI programming classes using awk, and it actually was better than Lisp, and I could believe it.
Yeah, because awk is really good at taking a text file that has stuff in it and processing that text into another form that is surprisingly readable.
Yeah, basically the way awk works is you create an awk script, and an awk script is basically a list of regular expressions and what to do if one of those regular expressions is matched.
So if I find fatal, warning, or error in the first n characters of any given line,
do this.
Then take these 4 columns delimited by these 2 different sets of delimiters and put them in this database.
Right. And basically you can process huge amounts of text in incredibly powerful ways in incredibly short amounts of time if you have awk and regular expression skills.
You can even do simple stuff it's weird that I'll often use awk instead of cut just because I have the awk syntax at my head more quickly. But log levels are really, really important, and most people at best they use log4j, which is okay.
Yep.
But really, the way I would do it is have a 2 or 3 digit number that's at the beginning of every file, no matter what. And just define for your developers, channel 1 is for fatal errors, anything fatal. Channel 18 is the super debug logs, log fucking everything there, because you're going to have a log mask. You're not going to write the debug logs all the time. You only write the debug logs if there's a problem that needs serious fixing, there's some crazy logic bug. All right, well, the developers turn up the debug log, which kills the performance, and they run the program, and it logs every single, memory statement, and then they go through it and figure out what happened.
Yep.
You don't want to log that every day. Every day you log, I don't know, the fatals, the warnings, the errors, maybe the, messages.
But yeah, anyway, let's talk about some other logging topics, right? So one thing that very few people do that I actually think is sort of a good idea is do log centralization, right?
Very important.
A lot of times you got a whole bunch of servers in your data center or whatever, right? And they all have logs. and something happens. But really, there's a bunch of physical servers, but they're really actually one system working in concert.
You shouldn't need to log into the actual system that had a problem to diagnose the problem.
Yeah, it's like you got to log into all these different systems now to figure out where the problem was.
And what if, say I've got a system that takes like information about a chip I'm building and it's on one server and it processes that and then sends it to another server.
Yep.
And then there's a problem there. Now I got to log into both servers, look at these two separate sets of log files.
Right. What you can do, and it's never configured by default, but most modern systems, you can configure logs to be sent over the network and logged in a central location. So you can have a computer that is the log computer, and every other computer sends its logs to that one computer. And now you can read the logs for every system in your system in one place. Yo, dog, I put a system in your system. I logged your logs.
Now, let's go one step further. I mean, that's really important and no one does it. But even
what if the
better
network goes down, though?
Is actually, well, you've got to set up something for that. You got to make sure your program's not going to lock on I.O.
And you also got to make sure that you always have logs no matter, how many systems go down.
Yep. But even worse than that is, all right, so I'm logging centrally, but how do I know there's a problem? Fucking nobody monitors their logs worth a goddamn. And I don't know why. It is trivial to monitor logs. Even if your logs are shitty, just have a process, run everything through a stream editor or have a grep that runs every 5 minutes on your log directory and just sends every warning in an email.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times, these days, for example, right, frontrowcrew.com, if there's an error on frontrowcrew.com, then the application itself sends me the email, right? I don't need to grep the logs for that to happen.
Yeah, but we don't care if we're down.
There are a lot of old systems that do not do this. They do not have this functionality,
or what if the system dies before it can send? Like, say it crashes hard, has some crazy exception.
Well, if the log was centralized and that log managed to escape the computer and to a place, and that centralized log server had a monitor, you would get an email, actually, about that completely failed system. Now, and that's a lot better chance than you're going to get from the failed system sending an email on its own.
Now, the other problem is that it's really hard to tailor that sort of monitoring. If you send too many things from your logs via email, then you're going to start ignoring the emails because they're meaningless and you're not going to respond to things that quickly.
That's
There's
very
a lot
true.
of noise.
Very true.
If you don't send enough, then you get an email. Server's down. You're like, okay, great. What caused that? So you've got to have, and really, my advice is to use SNMP, which is something nobody knows.
Some people know it, but
not enough people.
Usually, right, it's the thing that you outsourced and you're using it, but you don't realize it.
But what
you'll log into Amazon and you'll pay extra to get CloudWatch, which it monitors your servers. You see all your CPU usage graphs for all your servers on Amazon, but you don't realize they're using SNMP to do that.
Yep. Now, I'm not talking about using watches, active polls, see if this process is running or whatever. I'm talking about having an active process, an agent on your servers that greps through the logs all the time in real time. And instead of using grep, it's actually like a C program that is designed to know when a new log file is written and start reading there. It knows where it left off. It doesn't keep reading the same files over and over again. And have it just send an SNMP trap to some monitoring system with different log levels. So say, you've got your low-level text, they got a console open, and if there's an alarm, it pops up saying, Baphomet crashed on the Wins server.
Wins.
Wins.
Yeah, nobody freaking sets that shit up except for the top of the heap type of
you know who
system.
sets it up? The financial world.
Yeah.
You want to know why? Because all the smart people and all the money is there.
Yeah. I mean, there's I bet Twitter doesn't have any SNMPs, They don't know what if they even know what it is, they're not using it.
You know what's awesome? When I talk to vendors for I'm buying a product and usually the question will come up, so how should we monitor this? And the stony silence that follows is amazing. And sometimes I'll venture forth and say, is there a MIB? Can I monitor this thing with SNMP? And no one has ever given me an answer other than I'll have to get back to you on that. Followed by them Googling SNMP.
Yeah, the vendors are not the biggest technology people, right? That's the reason that they're salesmen. If you talk to the developers, maybe they know what SNMP was, but 99% of the time the answer is we didn't do that.
But
no one uses that in the whole world except you.
You got to monitor your logs. You've got to think, if you're a sysadmin and you care about the server, I mean, you might not care. If our forum goes down for an hour before we fix it, whatever. But if you're
Plus, Linode sends me emails when that happens.
Yeah, if you're running a business or you care about your server or whatever, like my Counter-Strike server has been down for like a month. I don't care. I'll fix it when I fix it. But like it crashed for like a week before I realized it because I didn't monitor it.
Yep.
But if I cared, I would have set up a system that would actively monitor this thing. I would monitor the logs. I would have it tell me if, say, a new version of Steam came out and the client wasn't working anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a fine line between if you send too much stuff, no one's going to read the monitoring. No one's going to care. If you send too little, then the monitoring's useless because you won't actually know what caused the problem.
Yeah. Sometimes you've also got to have it be even more intelligent. If you've got a whole bunch of systems and you're short on administrators, you got to be like, okay, if something is ultra important, like business critical thing is down, it should call people on the phone and have a voice that says, but if it's just like, okay, thing that's not business critical is down and it's the weekend, have it send an email first thing on Monday.
This is again why log levels are important. I mean, we kept saying things like fatal, warning, message. Those are in Log4j. Those are like the standard log channels.
Yep.
And if a system's written well, fatal means it couldn't recover. Fatal is a fatal error. The program is fucked.
Yep.
So you probably want a fatal error to page someone.
Yeah.
A warning says this may or may not be a problem depending on all these other factors. It's just a warning. And you have to decide if warnings should be paid attention to. You
gotta understand what the warning says. The text next to it is important.
You gotta understand what logs mean. And it's a lot easier when you're writing your own logs, but it'd be a good idea to understand what those things mean to, say, the Linux kernel. Varlog messages, what matters in there and what doesn't.
When you turn your computer on, a lot of people turn computers on, especially Linux ones, and a whole bunch of text flies by on the screen if you still have, depending on what system you're using.
Yep.
And people don't look at that text or understand it, most people.
Nor do they realize that demessage, they can go look at that after the fact.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like, that's text is probably important, and you should read it and understand what it's saying. It's not there for no reason at all. They put that there for, a reason. It wasn't...
Yep. Now, the problem with like a Windows box where an error pops up and you just ignore it and just click OK, but logs are different. You're a system administrator.
Your job is this.
If you complain about the users not reading the error messages and you don't look at varlog messages to diagnose a problem,
then shut up.
You're just as bad as them.
I think because what happens these days, right, is a lot of system administrators that are out in the world are not actually system administrators. They're just really, really good users. So they get the job, mostly the help desk job, which is I can help people fix their desktop problems because I'm a really good desktop computer user. But they're not a systems administrator. But in the Windows world, being a really good user gets you most of the way to systems administrator. You can install Exchange. You put the CDs in the server and you install it.
And 99% of your work is doing Exchange. You're living in the Exchange world. And setting up an Active Directory, right? But it's when it actually comes to the administering stuff, the things that a normal user would never have to do or encounter, they totally fail. And thus, most systems, especially Windows systems and Unix systems administered by non-Unix, hardcore Unix people, are totally fail. Which is most systems. My advice if you're a young kid in college and you're learning IT or CS or whatever.
And you don't like programming.
Well, you know what? It's applicable to IT and CS. CS people need to know logging.
Oh, yeah. If you're
you're the ones writing the logs.
Yeah, the point is if you know programming, right, you need to learn enough system administrating. That way you can set up your own servers to run your own shit, and you don't need to outsource it to anyone else.
You also will understand the way system administrators will
react.
If
you're developing an application, you need to have a view of the whole system. You can't just be having such a narrow view of just your code and the world around it just not even care.
At the same time, if you're an IT guy, you still need to know enough about coding to understand, like, if a developer logs thread numbers so you can trace, like, what one thread was doing versus another thread, or say a program crashed and you see the exception and then you do a stack trace to see what was going on. If you can't read any of that and understand it to a degree, you're screwed. CS and IT overlaps more than a lot of people realize.
Yeah, but whatever side you pick, right? Make sure that you know what you need to know about logs.
In the very least, just look at your Ubuntu box, which I assume you have, and
virtual machine.
Go to var log, do an ls, and look at all that stuff. There's tons of logs in there.
And read documentation about log rotate and syslog ng.
Yep, syslog ng. Don't use just syslog.
Well, every modern system is syslog ng.
Yeah.
And you're going to see a lot of things in the world that are called ng. That means next generation.
This has been Geek Nights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music, Kat Lee for web design, and Brando K for the logos.
Be sure to visit our website at frontrowcrew.com for show notes, discussion, news, and more.
Remember, Geek Nights is not one, but 4 different shows. Sci-Tech Mondays, Gaming Tuesdays, Anime Comic Wednesdays, and Indiscriminate Thursdays.
Geek Nights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 license. Geek Nights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.